Heartbreak in the playoff final last season for Crewe Alexandra. They were defeated by Crawley after defying all the odds in that semi-final second leg at Doncaster to reach Wembley, but they couldn't make that final step. But a really progressive season from Crewe Alexandra in Lee Bell's first full season of charge. I think we've seen lots of adaptability from Lee Bell, lots of spirit and camaraderie from the squad, and the ability to come back from lots of setbacks to achieve that top 7 finish a little bit ahead of schedule, you might say. This season is going to bring different challenges. Can they meet them, and can Crewe Alexandra stay on the right lines? That's what we're going to be discussing in this summer deep dive. Yes, welcome along to the summer deep dive on Crewe Alexandra. Thanks for joining me. This is one of many EFL debates, summer deep dives we're doing across the EFL between mid-June and mid-July. There's already been a few across League Two that have been uploaded to YouTube and Spotify, so go check those out once you're done with this one. For now, we're joined by Crewe Alexandra fan Tom Boon with some excellent blogs he's come up with as well, with writing about Crewe Alexandra. So it's great to get your insight, really, Tom, on the Railwaymen. I just wanted to get your thoughts on last season, really.
Well, I mean, last season was brilliant, wasn't it? And I think exactly as you said in the introduction, it was ahead of schedule. I don't think there was certainly no one outside of Crewe predicting us that high up. I don't think anyone inside Crewe was. I don't think anyone inside Crewe was predicting us there either. I'm an optimist, and I had us about 12th last season. But no, it was a really fun season. I think genuinely probably one of the best seasons of my life, because obviously the original promotion season in 2020 got derailed with COVID, but no, it was a really fun season, really good season. We made a lot of progress.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose we've got to give a lot of credit to Lee Bell for the work that he's done.
Yeah, I mean, when Bell came in as well, it was at a time where the club was in a bit of a state of, do we now need an external appointment? You know, we just had Artell, who'd come off the back of a really, really bad season. Alex Morris had come in, and sort of nobody inside the club, fan-wise, wanted Lee Bell to get the job. And I think what he did then was he did everything that Alex Morris had got right, but he improved on it, and he did it in his own way. I think it was clear to see that he was always the leader. He was always the mouthpiece of that duo. And so when he took the reins himself, it was sort of a home form improved drastically. Away on the road, we were tougher to beat. We weren't getting the results we got this season away from home, but we were tougher to beat. We were setting up right. And then, you know, he had a full summer, and credit to him. He's a top bloke as well. I've met him a few times, and he's just really got it right.
What do you think are those things that he changed from Alex Morris's reign, obviously having been assistant to Alex previously?
I think it was about the culture of the club. I think Bell sort of, when you look at the targets that him and Morris brought in, they're of similar profiles, but what Lee Bell prioritised, I think, was sort of the winning edge. He prioritised getting players in who were going to get us over the line. He sort of prioritised in his match approaches, setting us up as tougher to beat. I think when Morris first came in, there was still that sort of, it was still fresh from the Artell disaster season, and I think there was still we were still trying to play out from the back a little bit too much, which obviously is the Crewe Alex way, it's the Crewe Alex style, but there wasn't ever an identity of, you went into games and it was like, I don't know how we're setting up, I don't know how we're playing, I don't know what the tactics are. It was sometimes you didn't even know what the formation was, and it was just sort of every bit of uncertainty that we had under Morris and Bell. Second, it was Bell and Ryan Dicker, it just sort of went away, and it was clear what we were doing, it was clear what we were trying to do. And then, results came with it as well.
Do you think Ryan Dicker has been a key appointment in terms of the coaching makeup then, Tom?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's been said before that I think as the match is going on, he's sort of the brains behind what Lee Bell's saying. I think Lee Bell's a great mind football-wise before a game. In game, I think, and he said in press conferences before, and he said to me as well, that what Dicker does during the game, little tactical adjustments, little, switching what a player's doing, whether it's making a midfielder go from more of a box to box to a bit deeper, sitting back and battling a bit more. I think in-game decisions, Dick has been key for, and I imagine that translates to coaching. Obviously, that's behind the scenes. Fans don't know about that. But I imagine Dick is really, really important as a tactical mind and a coach behind the scenes with Bell.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then I suppose he's created a really good atmosphere around the place, and a squad that's been able to respond to so many different challenges as well.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that squad from last season, and in games, it responded to challenges the amount of times. I mean, there was a gimmick at the start of last season where we were the 2-2 club because we went 2-0 down and then got a 2-2 draw. It seemed like every week from August till about October. Off the pitch as well, so many of them responded to, individual setbacks. Chris Long, Courtney, there were many others who, had injuries or personal setbacks. And on the pitch, it just never got to us. It was like, there were spells. I mean, December was the real one where it was like, it felt like the season was getting derailed. And then we hit January and February, and it was the best form of our season right after the worst of the season. Towards the end, we just ran out of steam, didn't we? It was, I think, clear to see. I think most of us would have been happy, just with how they responded to everything that was a setback that year. I think most of us as fans would have been happy with just getting over the line into the playoffs. Doncaster obviously beating us 2-0 and then, losing the second leg and saying, proud of our efforts. But even there, I mean, who would have backed us against Doncaster? You'd have had to have been a very silly man to have been betting on us to get through that night. And then we went and did it. And there was a great point on the Railwaymen podcast about that was our cup final. That was the game. We played our cup final that night in Doncaster and then had just ran out of steam, ran out of energy by the time we got to Wembley. And then obviously Crawley, I mean, they just fully deserved to go up. They were brilliant that day.
Yeah, absolutely. Crawley were fantastic in the playoff final. Played some excellent football. What do you think is going to be on Lee Bell's in tray then, coming into the summer? Because there's a lot of a lot of work to be done, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of them, isn't it? I think we're all looking at Wembley as a huge what if. If we obviously were on our way to League One. You've got Luke Offord, Rio Adebisi and Elliot Nevitt. I mean, Rio's not confirmed to be anywhere. I can't imagine that'll be him re-signing with us. I think he deserves a move away as well. He deserves to go at League One. I thought Luke Offord and Elliot Nevitt deserved to go at League One, and unfortunately they've stayed in League Two, which will create its own challenges for us in 4 games next season against them. But yeah, he's got a lot of work cut out for him because it's a big squad turnover. I think that was the thing, is that you look at it, and other than the midfield, we sort of need players in every area. We've only got one contracted keeper. Mickey's the only out-and-out centre-half. You've got Zach Williams and Billington who could play there, and I imagine will feature there next season. But you need 1 or 2 centre-backs as a minimum. You need 2 or 3 wingers/strikers, depending on Courtney, if he stays as well. I think it's a lot of work to do, and it'll take a while to do it, because when you are Crewe Alexandra, the kind of players you're recruiting aren't the ones, they're not the early deals. You've got your Salfords, your Bradfords, your MK Dons. They're getting their business done early because they can attract bigger players, and we're going to have to sort of stay patient, stay true to what Josh Kennard's doing behind the scenes recruitment wise, and get it spot on. But it is a big summer rebuild ahead.
Yeah, I think Josh Kennard feels like a big appointment, because previously the club hasn't had a head of recruitment. That hasn't been how the club's operated, partly because it's been so youth oriented. But I guess you've got to give Josh Kennard credit for his impact, because last summer's recruitment was absolutely outstanding.
I think that's the thing, is that since he's come in, he's done a lot of sort of work for the recruitment, but what I think his finest work at his role with the club was when he sorted the loan move to Raith Rovers for Conor O'Riordan, because it was that move when he wasn't going to be starting for us that actually developed him into a first name on the team sheet by the time he was back, and then made the club £500,000 in the move to Blackburn as well. But yeah, no, his recruitment is really good. I think I was doing a piece the other day for my blog about all of our signings since relegation, and I only really saw 5 out of 26 signings as ones that you could categorise as failures, which, I mean, that's a really good ratio. Most clubs, it's sort of 50-50, sometimes 40-60, leaning towards bad signings. But
yeah,
what he does is he gives me faith that we're not active on the transfer market right now, but when we do, I know it'll be the right players, because it was with Mickey Demetriou. We lost a lot of centre-back targets last year. There was sort of, I think, links with Charlie Ragland. There was a few, loan players that we were linked with, and, they didn't come through. And then you saw the players we were linked with go to other clubs. And then we got Mickey, and it was like, well, he smashed it. He's absolutely smashed it. We've not got our first target. And then we've been patient and ended up with someone even better. And I think that's what I'm hoping we do again. I think that's Lee Bell at his best. He likes characters who aren't first choice, that he can motivate. He likes players that, have their struggles, have their issues, that he can really tailor to what he wants them to be. And I think that's what we get at Crewe, is we get characters and personalities that buy into the football club. And it's all about that with recruitment, you don't want the first choice on the market because they're the best player. You want someone who buys into the culture, buys into our training facilities, buys into our youth setup, and knows they're going to have a good future at Crewe. And I think that's what Kennard's done brilliantly.
Yeah, well, all credit to him, and that certainly made a difference, having somebody running that recruitment side on a day-to-day. I wanted to come to you about the goalkeeping situation, because you had Harvey Davies on loan for part of last season, but didn't quite go to plan that loan signing, and then Tom Booth came into the side, didn't he? And then I think he got Max Stryek towards the end of the campaign, but do you expect Tom Booth to start next season as the number one goalkeeper, or do you expect to bring another one in?
I think he will start, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I do rate Tom Booth very highly. It just feels like what we did for so many years with Dave Richards was it allowed complacency with the goalkeepers, because it was always, we've got Dave as number 2, whoever else we have is number 1, and there wasn't really that competitive edge that I think you need between keepers at the lower leagues. I think if you have two keepers of very similar abilities, it pushes usually one of them on to be the best version of themselves. And I think we got it really right in the loan market with Okonkwo and Beadle. You're not going to get two better loan keepers in League Two than that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then Harvey Davies, I think because of the bar that we set for goalkeepers, I thought Harvey Davies became a scapegoat at times. I think he was a standard League Two loan keeper. He was exactly what I expected. He was, he had some traits which needed great work on them. But if you're getting loaned out to League Two from Liverpool and you're not, getting a Championship loan, it's because you do have those traits that aren't allowing you to thrive at a higher level. So for me, it was expected. And I think Tom Booth has his own, things that need great work on. I'd be very happy to watch him play number 1 for 46 games next season and be improving constantly, because it's an asset for the club. Obviously, it's one of our own, so you want them to succeed that little bit more. But I think next season I would be looking for a lone goalkeeper to start, or a permanent, experienced mind to sort of challenge him, but also, start as and when needed. Because if we do recruit someone to just be number 2, I think it will allow complacency to creep into Boofy. I mean, we have got Kieran Westwood behind the scenes as well, obviously doing goalkeeper training, which I think, that's a great keeper to have behind the scenes.
What a Championship goalkeeper he's been in his career.
Yeah, I know. He is sort of a top-end Championship keeper, got international experience. So he will rub off the right way on our younger keepers as well. And he's someone that I think is really useful to have at the club. But yeah, no, we went through a lot of keepers last season, obviously not through any fault of our own by the end, with Max Stryjek coming in on the emergency loan. But it is one of them. I'd like to see Boofy be the number 1, but if he isn't, I'd understand it, because I think that could also make sense short term for next season.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So then I suppose we'll talk about the right back spot. You signed Ryan Cooney last summer, a little bit like Harvey Davies. He's somebody who possibly divided opinion last season and maybe didn't hit the heights some might have been hoping. Do you think that he's got another level to find at Crewe Alexandra?
I think he has. He was someone that I was a huge fan of in that Morecambe promotion team, the lockdown one. I really liked that squad. I think they had a few ex-Crewe players, so I was checking out how they were doing weekly, and I had a good chat with Kelvin Mellor about that squad. And obviously, he was Cooney's, battler for right back. They were both contending to be starting right back. And I got chatting to him about Cooney before, a year before Cooney signed, and he sort of said the sort of attacking mind that Cooney has from fullback is something that's seriously impressive. And at Crewe, I think he just never really got going. I don't know whether he wasn't rated at the start because we were playing Rio had a BC out of position at the start of the season, and then when Zach Williams got injured and Rio went back to left back, we then had Billow breaking through, and Billington is the man for me who should be one of the first names on the team sheet next season. I think he's a really, really good right back. I think he was someone I wasn't really, wasn't on my radar. He wasn't really going to break through next, and then he did. And I think Cooney and him can offer great competition to each other. I think Cooney offers something a little different. I think he's a great personality to have in the dressing room. You can tell he lifts the lads. He loves celebrating with the fans. I do really like him.
I'm sure I saw a clip of him celebrating at Doncaster. I thought that was a really sweet
moment. Yeah, there was. He's just a great personality to have in the squad, I think. And, I know personally him and Chris Long are quite close. I know he's got good relationships with players in the group. And I think that does help bring a winning culture. So even if he's not starting, I think Cooney will offer us something. And I think going into the season with Cooney and Billington, that immediately in my mind doesn't place the right back slot as, a instant requirement. It'd be great to get another right back in, but I don't think it's necessary.
Right. Okay. Interesting. I mean, I always think with Ryan Cooney, I know that he's got a good technical ceiling that if he can find, I think he can make a contribution that way. I think because the issue you have is because he's not particularly quick, so he's not a direct right back that's going to hit the flank and get crossed in that way. You would kind of like to see him be technical and maybe a bit better defensively. At the moment, I think he's a good technical right back, but you wouldn't say he's a flying right back that can hit the byline, and you wouldn't say he's great defensively either. So for me, I think he needs to work on his defensive game. That's just my sort of outside perception. But I guess I wanted to come to the loss of Luke Offord because that could hit you quite hard because he was a really important part of Crewe, not just as a leader in the group, someone who would come through the academy a few years earlier, but also somebody who allowed you to switch formations in game as well.
Yeah, I think it's a weird. I think he's probably the first academy graduate where I think I've pretty much watched every single game he's ever featured in because I was there at his debut at home to Leyton Orient in the promotion season. And then beyond that, I've seen pretty much every game of his career so far. So him moving on is sad from like a club perspective as much as it is for, how good he was for the team as well. I think it's one of them with Luke Offord. He can play centre half. I think we discovered last season that he is a brilliant holding mid as well because his size isn't stereotypical of a leading League Two centre half. So the fact that he can fill in at both sort of does mean he's a very good asset to have because he can do two roles to a very, very high standard. And that I'd be disappointed if at MK Dons next season he's not used as a holding midfielder because I think it suits their passing style so much. I think it suits him so much, and I think that would be his best role there. And I think it would have been his best role here next season had he signed. I
don't know if he's technical enough to play as an out holding midfielder. I think sometimes the role I see him playing is stepping into midfield to allow one of the holding midfielders to maybe push further up the pitch. But to be a holding midfielder from like the start of play, I'm not sure he's quite for a super possession based side. I'm not sure technically he's quite at that level personally.
I think that's probably fair. I think just as we were about to see if that was true at Crewe as well, he then got injured because he was sort of starting games at holding mid and it was sort of, oh, this is happening now. And then literally he got injured right as I think that would have been tested. So probably will be safer next season for him to be that centre half who can transition in game, like you said, when needed as a holding mid. But I mean, he's a stereotypical Crewe Alexandra captain. He leads by example and he leads by how he acts on the pitch. But deep down, I think a lot of the lads younger than him who were academy graduates looked up to him as that's what we want to do at Crewe Alexandra. And I think to lose that when we, supposedly offered him one of the highest ever Crewe Alexandra contracts as well, I think is just deeply disappointing. And then for him to not go to League One, I think that really did disappoint me. I understand why you'd move to MK Dons. I think the brand of football will suit him. I think that the sort of he can thrive in League Two and flourish, and then hopefully for him get a better and bigger move after that. But I do think if he was leaving Crewe, he should have been in League One. If he was going to stay in League Two, it should have been with us. Obviously, that's biased because of how much we love him and how good he was for us. But yeah, he'll leave a big hole that I think Mickey will fill in terms of leadership ability. I think in terms of quality on the pitch, I think that will be the real void there, and something that you can't really replace on our budget neither.
Well, I suppose one player who does provide excellent leadership is Mickey Demetriou, who has been a really key part of Newport County's squad over the last few years, and how they sort of punched above their weight, and then I suppose did the same with Crewe Alexandra. What an incredible season he had at centre half.
Yeah, I think he is, for me, the epitome of a stereotypical Crewe Alex centre half signing. We always like to have an experienced centre half that sort of rallies the team, because it's an important position to have experience in as well. And I mean, even in recent years, we had sort of Eddie Nolan, we had Michael Nottingham, we had to a lesser extent a Michael Rains and George Ray types to sort of fill that leadership role.
Yeah.
But Mickey's just, I mean, he's been the best one of that genre of player we like to have at Crewe. I think his goal contributions, his leadership, I mean, you physically couldn't ask for more of a centre half signing if you tried. He's genuinely been so key to what we do, been so key off the pitch, and such like a class act as well. Just really, really, I can see a good future for him in the coaching and managerial world as well. I think the way he carries himself and the way he sort of likes to lead others, I think that is something that I'd love to see him do with us. Love to see him achieve it in the game as well, if it's something he wanted to do. But he's someone that I think gives us confidence. The fact he resigned so quickly, the fact he, bought into what we're doing as a club, wants to stay. I think it'll be hard for him to match the standard he set this season. But even if he was half as good, you've still got one of the best centre halves in the league.
You certainly have. He's had a fantastic season, both from a defensive point of view and from a goal scoring goal scoring perspective. Because he's joint second top goal scorer for the Alex last season with 9 goals, and not to mention second top assister with 6. So you wouldn't think with those numbers he was a centre half, but that just shows how strong Crewe Alexandra were from set pieces last season. But talking of centre halves, you lost Conor O'Riordan to Blackburn Rovers in January. How did you find Ed Turns stepping up in O'Riordan's absence?
I mean, because Ed Turns was signed on deadline day, and he was very much overshadowed by a signing later that day with Charlie Kirk returning to Crewe. But
Well, it wasn't late that day, Tom. It was like the following morning.
Yeah, it was later the following morning, wasn't it? Yeah.
Oh, sorry for Kirky. Someone should have said, "Get yourself a hotel, mate." Don't want me up all these hours. But anyway.
No, Ed Turns, I think at the time I said he'll be the more important signing. As good as it was to have Kirk back, and as nice it was for a nostalgia point of view, I think Ed Turns was always going to be more important, because replacing Conor O'Riordan was going to be very hard, and to get a promotion winner the season before and someone who'd got minutes in League One in a very good Richie Wellens side as well. That was just nice to see that those are the sort of players we could attract when we're doing well. And he really did thrive. I think his best performance was definitely Stockport away. That was when we saw Ed Turns and Mickey at their best, such a good defensive duo, and then they both got on the score sheet assisting each other. So it was a nice little touch, that was. But no, he was a really good replacement for someone who seemed irreplaceable. And it's been disappointing to see O'Riordan's not got as many minutes or didn't get loaned back to us, if that was the plan from Blackburn. But no, I think he'll definitely go on now and thrive at Championship level if he does get a go. And if not, he'll get a League 1 or 2 loan that he can hopefully do well at as well. But no, Turns is someone I'd love to have back next season. I think it's unrealistic, but it shows we can replace a centre half well enough to do well. So that is what is a good takeaway from that.
Yeah. Well, talking of defenders, I really want to bring up Lewis Billington, Tom, because this is someone who made his debut in 21-22 in that Doncaster game. But other than that was his only appearance in that season and the 22-23. So this is really a sort of a new emergence. And I guess I was really surprised by the maturity that he's established so quickly as a Crewe Alexandra defender, and the versatility as well.
I'd forgotten until you literally just said there that he actually played at Doncaster Rovers. I literally forgot he was there the day we went down. Yeah, of course. And then just went unheard of. And I think a lot of Crewe fans heading into this season, and I said before, he wasn't really on our radar. He was someone who came on against Wrexham in the Papa John's or Bristol Street, whatever it's called, trophy. And I didn't go to that game, but a mate of mine did and said, he looked really bad. He's not ready. He needs a loan out. And then when he got his go, it was just like you were watching a player who only got a chance because of injuries and only really was known as someone on the periphery and playing under 21s level. But the man who was behind O'Riordan and Zach Williams at youth level suddenly just flown above them in stock at the minute. He's really, really good. He's really versatile. He can play centre half. He can play right back. I think if needed, he can shift into what Luke Offord did in that holding mid role if necessary. He's just someone who's got so much maturity, sort of a very good attacking mind as well that can definitely be trained and coached to get him goals and assists next season as well. But just his one-to-one defensive work, it's like out of nowhere, he's become someone who, and I mean, that's what you expect from Crewe, isn't it? A player breaking through who isn't even on your radar, just comes through and then bang, they're in the starting sheet every week. And that's what he did. And that's what I love so much about this football club, that someone who you're not even really thinking about breaking through, you're thinking about playing under 21s, maybe getting a loan out to, a National League North team, comes in and plays League Two football week in, week out, and does not look out of place at all. And I think he's someone I'm really excited to get, hopefully 30 plus games next season and really, really make that position his own.
Do you know what, though, Tom? I think this is a real plus point of the Crewe Alexandra system, because I think the prestige of the name Crewe Alexandra Academy, I think it inspires people, because I think at other clubs where these players don't get the opportunities or won't expect to get the opportunities, it's like if you're not sort of first choice or top of the pecking order through the academy the whole way through, players can get a bit downhearted and it's like, well, I'm not going to get my opportunity. Whereas I think with Crewe Alexandra, there's something about, and obviously I know in Billington's case, the injuries did create that window for him, but there's something for me about the fact that you're a young player at Crewe, you'll get your opportunity. You might get your opportunities.
Yeah.
I think that keeps players alert. I think it inspires players. I think there's something quite, something quite powerful about that, really.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's one of them that if you're a youth player at Crewe Alexandra, you'll get a go. If you're good enough, you will get a go, because we prioritise our youth over anyone else in the squad. And so, even if you're not the top of your, age group, if you're fifth or sixth best, there's a good chance you'll get minutes. And, if you impress, you're going to be an asset for the club, and you're going to be a player who will play regular league football for the club as well. And I think that's just such a good model. I mean, this season, I think we had over 20 of our players who featured to come through our academy. Like, that is just so impressive that, at some clubs they celebrate having 3 or 4, and then we're just here very casually having over 20, not even making a deal about it. And you get players who came through the academy, they come back later in their careers because of how much they enjoyed their time at Crewe, and it happens time and time again.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really excited to see Lewis Billington continue to progress. I was going to ask you where's going to be his best position. Tim Robinson. Where am I saying? I'm talking to Tom Boon. This is a comment from Tim Robinson, who says Billington. Get my names right. Billington should be our right-sided centre half alongside Mickey Demetriou next season. Do you agree with that, Tom? And do you see centre half as being his number one position, and he'll cover elsewhere, as opposed to nailing down a position somewhere else in the squad?
I think the thing is with him is I wouldn't be against him either way. I think if he was the right-sided centre half, I think that's fine. I think him and Mickey had a really good partnership a few times this season, and then, like you said, it would allow us to bring in a right back as well. And I think there seems to be a lot of talented fullbacks without a club this season. I've noticed that a lot more than other seasons. There's a lot of free agents who I'm like, there's 5 or 6 that I'm looking at and I'm like, they'd be a great right back or a left back in League Two. So it could be an opportunity to capitalise on that market as well. It would also, I think it's down to whatever Billington wants to play. I think if he wants to play centre half, play him there. If he wants to play right back, play him there because he's good enough at both. But I think, no, Tim definitely has a point because there is a brilliant partnership between him and Mickey. And at centre-half, it's something he played at youth level a lot more than he did right back. So it could allow him to thrive next season and really form a good partnership. And like I said, bring in centre-half for competition, but then a right back to really push Cooney on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That would make a lot of sense, I think. But I wanted to come to you about another academy graduate, and I suppose it's ironic. We've talked about Lewis Billington kind of coming out of nowhere almost this season and becoming a bit of a mainstay. I feel a little bit like Zach Williams has gone. A little bit almost the opposite of Lewis Billington in a sense, because I think his best season for Crewe Alexandra, in my opinion, was the 21-22 season under David Attell. And actually the following season in League Two, in the lower league, he maybe didn't, for whatever reason, hit the heights that we were maybe hoping for. Do you think there's something to do with, has he got to play on the left of a back three? Is that thing of not quite good enough to be centre back in a four and not good enough going forward to be a left back? Or is there some sort of problem with him in a back four? What do you think is the reason why Zach Williams hasn't quite kicked on to that next level that we were maybe hoping for?
I think it's a mix, to be honest, of just sort of bad luck and timing. I think when he came through in that relegation season, I think people possibly overhyped him a tiny bit because of, he was a bright spark in a really, really bad season.
Sure.
And so a lot of emphasis was placed on him as the next academy guy. And I think with that pressure, I think a player can almost thrive a bit more when there's not the expectation on him. And I think people really expected him to come to League Two, forgetting that, it was only even now, it's only his, second and a half year in pro football.
Yeah, sure.
It's similar. It reminds me a lot of Callum Ainley in a weird way, that when Callum Ainley came through, Dario said that, him and Charlie Kirk would be the next £1 million assets at Crewe Alexandra Football Club. And it was almost like with Callum Ainley, Kirk got a move before him, Dale got a move before him, NG, Pickering, Wintle, even now Offord, they've all moved on, and Callum Ainley sort of never quite pushed on and reached the heights. And I think a similar thing could possibly happen with Zach Williams. I think he's good enough to be left back. I really do think he's an okay enough left back. I think going forward, he's got a lot of good dribbling ability. I think that comes out best in a back five. I do agree with that, on the left of a back five, because he gets two centre halves to cover him if he goes forward, and he still has the left back either overlapping, underlapping, or covering him defensively. So he's got traits, and I think he could work in a back five on the left. I do think he can work as a left back in a back four. I think if needed, he does fine in a back four on the left. I just think people did perhaps forget with him because of the hype and, the media attention that did actually come with his man of the match when he wasn't old enough to get champagne.
Oh my God, the Gillingham game where when one of the press officers rushed to the corner shop to get him a packet of crisps.
Exactly. And so I think that just sort of put him on a pedestal above every other youth academy player at the time. And I don't think he's not done anything that you wouldn't expect of a typical Alex academy graduate. He's just not reached the best in class heights that Conor O'Riordan did. But not matching Conor O'Riordan's ability isn't a bad thing, because Conor O'Riordan was really, really good. And Zach Williams, I think, will have his time to shine. I think it should be this season, because I think there will be a lot more emphasis on this is his season to really prove himself. And I think he's the type of player that he has an arrogance about him, but in a good way. It's more of a confidence than an arrogance, where he will thrive when people are doubting him. And I think that's something that Lee Bell does really well. He really likes to inspire a group that have the odds against them. And I think as individuals, now is the time where Zach Williams has the odds against him a little bit. And I think that's where Lee Bell pushes him on. That's where I think this is the season where Zach Williams will now do his best because of the pressure on him.
Yeah, absolutely, and good luck to Zach Williams, because he's clearly a phenomenal talent with real potential in terms of the long term. But he's still a very young lad, of course, as well. So hopefully he can have a big season, and best of luck to him. I wanted to come on into the midfield area, because it was an area of quite a lot of change, I think it's fair to say, last season. No player played in central midfield more than 26 times last season in terms of
Really?
starts.
Wow.
So it was an area with a lot of disruption. Connor Thomas was probably the most regular player in there, and Joel Taberner would have started regularly had he stayed fit. Jack Powell as well, but that was a real problem for you, wasn't it? Injuries.
Yeah, I think we had a really good midfield last season, and I think going into next season, I think it's our strongest area. To be honest, I think, like you said, there was a lot of change and turnover. Obviously, we had, to start the season, it was a midfield of, I think it was Jack Powell, Taberner, and Thomas, wasn't it? And then it turned into Joe White was getting minutes, and then he became irreplaceable, and it was Joe White, and it was alongside Taberner, and then. It did, like you said, it changed a lot, and there wasn't really, you can't associate a midfield three with last season because there were so many players. There was Osterfield, there was Lee, there was Holecek, there was Taberner, Thomas, Powell, White. There were so many players who did play midfield, and then at one point we had Luke Offord playing there, and so there was so much turnaround. Aaron Rowe and Tracy, and even Kirk were playing in midfield at one point. So yeah, I mean, it was a wild card last season, our midfield, but I think. As a base for next season, we've got Thomas, Jack Powell, who'll feel like a new signing when he's back fit because he is so good at League Two level. Joel Taberner, Holecek, and then you're looking at Owen Lunt and Callum Agius on the periphery. That's six good midfield options without recruitment, and I think you're looking at, similar to last season, getting a Joe White kind of player to go in, offer competition, and improve the midfield, and that's a really strong League Two midfield. And you just need to build an attack that in front of it can, feed off the chances that a midfield like that would create. And so, yeah, I think the midfield is the only area that doesn't really worry me at the minute. I think that injuries could completely turn that around, and we suddenly need. Another player, but especially with Charlie Colquette's wages coming off the club as well. And I don't even mean that in any disrespectful way to Charlie. I think, he's clearly a top player with top pedigree and a top ceiling, but he just, he didn't play a full 90 minutes in 2 years for the club, and not his fault whatsoever, but you can't help but feel on a high wage that really isn't useful for us. So we've got money to play around with, hopefully, and one or two midfielders being added. I think we're in a good spot for midfield. Yeah,
that sounds positive. I guess the question that's going to dictate whether you go with a 3-man midfield or a 2-man midfield is whether you can sort of home in on a formation this season, because I guess this is a thing that we've not really seen from Lee Bell last year, because his strength was so much adapting to it hitting the fan and having to sort of change things around so often, and he was so good at that. But I think if you can steer clear of injuries, what I would really like to see him is sort of settle down on maybe a consistent formation and a bit more continuity, I suppose. And I'm wondering what formation, if everyone's fit, the formation that is going to be best for Crewe Alexandra.
It's interesting because in the club fans forum, I think back, it was the one with Morris and Lee Bell actually, and they were asked that question, what's the best formation going to be, and Lee Bell said he was a big fan of a 4-4-2, but it sort of doesn't hold as much place in a modern game, and that they did seem to say, both of them, Morris and Bell at the time, that they really wanted to settle on that 4-2-3-1, and I think it's been clear that's what we wanted to do from the start when we set up at Rochdale, and we had Callum Ainley play one of his best games in a Crewe shirt in that number 10 role. And I think, like you said, they've just been forced, cards not in our hands, just been forced to switch to either a back three, to switch to a 4-4-2, to switch to whatever it may be, and especially, switching formations in game as well. We've not had time to settle on that 4-2-3-1. But I think that, for me, is what we will try and play with. I think we like to have that number 10. I think Holecek is the man who will do that next season in that sort of role ahead of the midfield, balancing, playing, linking up with the wingers and the striker. And I think that's what Holecek will be doing in starting games regularly, doing that as well. I think our midfield options give us flexibility, though, as well. You've got a Connor Thomas type player who I think is just criminally underrated by Crewe fans. I still think he's one of the best signings we've made in the last sort of 5 years. I think he's so useful and he's so good at breaking up play. He's so good at getting stuck in, playing
He
for
can
the
get
bag.
forward though as well, Tom, which I was quite surprised at how good he is
Yeah,
going forward.
I can't remember what game it was, but last time I chatted to you at an Alex game, you were surprised to see that he was the more advanced
Yes,
between him and Joe White, wasn't he?
It was the 1-0 win over Notts County in November.
Yes, it was. And that is what he offers. He does offer a lot going forward as well. And we recruited him as, the Ryan Wintle replacement we'd needed for so long. But I think he offers more than just being that sort of stereotypical defensive midfielder. I think he's got a very good mind going forward that is perhaps not allowed to flourish as much because of the role we expect him to play. But I think he's a really useful player. One of my favourite things he does is he fills in at left back and right back when he's sort of, when one of the wing backs pushes forward, he drops down and fills in there. And I think he's got such good footballing brain. I mean, he does his coaching academy with younger age groups as well. And I think you can tell why he does that. It's something that he's got a great football in mind that he wants to just share. And I think at Crewe, we've really seen him, change the sort of way our midfield operates in the last 2 years. So having him fit for a full season would be ideal as well. Yeah.
Yeah, no, Tim. The point I was making to Tim, just referring to his comment here, is I was surprised that Connor Thomas was more attacking than Joe White, because I was expecting Joe White to be more adventurous. So that was the point there. I think for me, I think the Ryan Wintle replacement is probably more likely to be somebody like Jack Powell. Do you think he can bring that sort of passing range to Crewe this season? You there, Tom?
Yeah, I am there. Yeah, sorry, mate. I think did it cut out there a little bit, or?
Oh, did I cut out? No, sorry. I was just asking you about Jack Powell.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I think he is sort of a player that, because Wintle was always underrated for just sort of his passing range, his creativity. He was the holding midfielder in that 4-3-3 that Artell set up with, but he was very much a deep lying playmaker type player rather than that sort of anchor or ball winning midfielder that you'd expect of a stereotypical League Two team. And I think Jack Powell's creativity, I mean, he only played, I think, 15 games for us this season, but, still got like six, 7 goal contributions. I'm not sure on the exact numbers, but he did contribute, when he played. And he's the sort of player that very consistently turns up as a 7 or 8 out of 10 kind of player and gets, 7 goals, 6 assists in a season, just very, very casually, because he did that a lot at Crawley Town as well. He's a player I think we really need back. I think between him, Thomas and Taberner, you've got a really good League Two midfield. And I think Jack Powell, like you said, is just sort of, like you said, probably more the Ryan Wintle profile than Connor Thomas ever was. It's just the way we set up it is that Thomas was recruited to be a Ryan Wintle type player originally, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Just going to reply to Tim, who said Joe White definitely played in a more advanced role in that game, in pretty much every game. I'm sure that's true that Joe White did more in terms of creativity, but definitely in the Notts County game, it was Connor Thomas break forward and had a couple of chances, and at times, at certain moments, break a lot further forward than Joe White in terms of getting into goal scoring areas. So I think what I'm really excited, Tom, is Joel Taberner. I remember he came off the bench a few times in the 22-23 season, and he was talked about as being a real game changer. Started last season in sumptuous form, and it was a real shame that he got injured, wasn't it?
I think him and Jack Powell were forming a really, really nice partnership as well. And then obviously Powell got taken away from us, and then shortly after, so did Taberner. I mean, it did allow Joe White to come in and flourish and be that sort of midfielder that, has now got in Premier League minutes. But Taberner is someone who you want to see on a consistent basis because he's creative, he's got goal scoring ability, he's got good positional awareness. I think a lot of his goals that you see, he's got into a position that I'd argue a lot of League Two midfielders don't regularly get into. It's sort of, he finds that little extra gap of space where he can get into a goal scoring opportunity so casually, so easily. And I think at his best, he for me would be a player who could get certainly double digits in, either goals or assists if he was given that sort of time. But he's a player that I think we do now need to see consistently. Obviously, hopefully injuries don't hinder that, but he would be someone who is ready to be getting his, 40 plus games for the Alex, as an academy graduate. And I think that's what we need next from Joel Taverner.
Yeah, hopefully he can do that and chip in with a few goals as well. So I want to come to you about the attack. How do you feel it's looking at the moment for the Alex?
Oh, is there an attack at the Alex at the minute, Gab? for the longest time, it was just Shiloh Tracy and a dream, wasn't it? I mean, we've kept hold of Chris Long. I think there was a lot of raw emotion still attached to Wembley when that was announced, and I think unfortunately he was scapegoated far too much. I think we all know Chris Long at his best is 15, 20 goals in League Two. It's just he's never been fit enough to carry out that much time for us. So it's a big what if with Long, but he's a useful asset to have. I think between him and hopefully Courtney, if Courtney stays, that's easily Nev's goals replaced with two strikers. And I imagine we'll be recruiting a third and wingers on top of that as well. So I think the attack's the one that we need to get right. It's the hardest to recruit. Goals cost money. So you're either taking a risk on someone who's unproven on a loan, or you're betting on a character that possibly hasn't scored as many goals as we should be after, but you're hoping to motivate and train him into someone who can. And that's exactly what Elliot Nevitt was. Never really scored lots of goals at League Two level before Crewe, and it took him 6 or 7 months to actually bag one for us. So I trust Lee Bell to bet on a type of player who he can motivate and who he can turn into a goal scorer. But with Courtney and Long, if Courtney does stay, of course, you've got two built-in League Two goal scorers in your team already, and I think that is priceless in terms of it's really hard to recruit a goal scorer. It's really hard to recruit someone who is going to deliver goals. So to have two already in your team as a base, as a foundation, without any recruitment would be brilliant. But no, the attack is looking weak. I think it's a big year for Tracy as well. I think he's a player where, if he had end product, he's in the Championship, but he doesn't have the end product, and that's why he's, didn't move on from Cambridge to a high level and why he's at Crewe. But that's standard in League Two. If any League Two player didn't have some sort of trait that holds them back, they'd be in the Championship. So yeah, he's someone that I'm looking forward to seeing hopefully add goals and assists to his game, because I think he's very, very useful, and he's sort of the unpredictable winger type that we've wanted since getting relegated. We tried it with Sambu, and I mean that was far from a success with him, unfortunately. And then we tried to recruit it in that January with David Amu as well, and he never got going. And so I think Tracy is that unpredictable, fast, physical winger that we had when we had Dan Powell last time we went up. It's just about now tailoring him into someone with end product. And I think he definitely can be. I think next year he could be someone who we look back on and go, wow, he really improved, really thrived. And hopefully we work on that with him in pre-season, because him as a winger already having it at the club is a good thing, definitely.
Yeah, I definitely feel with Shiloh Tracy, 1 or 2 times a game, he can go on this incredible run, sort of third the length of the pitch and create a chance. But it's what he's doing in between those sorts of moments that will define whether he can make a real serious contribution to Crewe next season, and also whether he can add that end product that you've talked about.
Yeah,
hopefully he can find that extra gear. Obviously, Rio Adebisi is going to be a big loss. How far do you think he can go, Tom?
I think Rio Adebisi had the most impossible task in recent Crewe history, and that was replacing a certain Harry Pickering. I think to try and live up to Harry Pickering's standard in League Two is one of the hardest tasks any fullback was ever going to have to do. And he not only did it, but he got better numbers along the way. And I'm not saying, he was better than Harry Pickering. I think they're very similar in ability at their best, but he certainly outperformed him numbers-wise going forward, and that is just a true fact. I think Adebisi is someone who I think his ceiling probably is the Championship, but I think he's definitely someone who I could see thriving at a top-end League One club, and I hope that's where he goes. I hope he ends up at a club who are pushing in League One. I think he would definitely suit Peterborough. I think they always tend to be linked with Crewe Alex prospects because they do great business at Peterborough, and smart business is usually a Crewe Alex Academy product without being biased. But I think he's someone that I could see
you can
thriving.
get good players for 300 grand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so I think at a League One club, he's someone that could just really thrive, and I imagine he will end up in League One. I'd be unbelievably disappointed if all three of our big losses still ended up in the same league as us. But no, he is really a top player, and I think had always had this potential, but we'd never seen enough of it. And then he finally got going in the League One relegation season, and beyond that, he's just been a really, really good stalwart of the Bell and Morris era. Probably our overall best performer over the last 2 seasons. Mickey obviously has a very good argument to go against that, as does someone like Dan Adji. But over the course of 2 seasons on the whole, I think Rio does go down as the best player so far of the Morris and Bell Crewe Alex era. And no, I wish him the best. He will go. He isn't re-signing. I'd love it. Won't happen. But yeah, you can't help but wish an academy prospect the best wherever they go next.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking of academy graduates, who are the next ones along the conveyor belt? I suppose you've got Matis Holacek, who has been a name that's kind of been sort of floated around Crewe circles for a couple of years now, because he was part of the Slovakia youth teams. So that suggests he's got real potential, but he's been held back by long-term injuries prior to this season, where he had more minutes than he's ever had previously. Did Holacek do enough in 23-24 so to suggest next season could be the big year for him?
Yeah, no, I would say he did. I think he was a player who showed real glimpses, and I think my favourite Holacek performance was away at Stockport, and it was a passing of the torch moment from a certain Nick Powell, where our own Matis Holacek completely outclassed him that day, and you thought, that was our man who went for 6.5 million to Manchester United, and our player now, 10, 12 years on, has just outperformed him in the same league that Nick Powell thrived in for us. And I think Holacek's probably similar to Zach Williams. He's the leading man at the minute of this is the one who will do well. I'm expecting Nathan Robinson, who's a name. He's a man who I think will break through, possibly not as heard of because he's not made beyond 1 or 2 cameos for us so far. But he's a centre half who played midfield at youth level, got switched to a centre half because of his build. But he's got that natural passing ability that you expect of a Crewe Alex centre half because he played in midfield, and he's made a cameo. I think it was against Barrow when we did that ticket promotion in December and lost 3-1. And he looked really, really, at home playing in League Two. But an interesting point that I saw someone made the other day was that our academy's probably been held back a few years, as have all academies, because of COVID, where young players at 13 to 16 age groups weren't getting consistent games because they weren't allowed to play. So there's been a setback in sort of younger players of they aren't at the level they should be at their year group because they obviously didn't have the experience, didn't have the matches. And I think that might be something we see for a few years to come in just general young players breaking through, that they're not going to be breaking through as consistently as they were in past years at, every club in the EFL, just because they didn't have the minutes that they should have had, and they didn't have the development and training built into them. But no, if I was to pick 3 men to break through next season for the Alex, I would go with Holacek, Robinson. Hopefully he can get some minutes, and Callum Agius is someone I think we will see a lot more of next season.
Talk to me about Callum Agius then, Tom, because he's a left winger, isn't he? You can,
I think
dribbler.
He's one of them typical Alex players where he starts as a winger and then we break him through in midfield. I think we do that a lot with players. It's because whenever he has made cameos, he's come on as the attacking midfielder. He's come on in that 10 role, which is what happened with Regan Griffiths, who was known as a winger at youth level. It happened with Holacek. I think he played on the wing at youth level. So you do sort of see, Crewe players, we like to break them through in the 10 role because I think it can sometimes be an easier role to play. There's less emphasis on beating your man and getting crosses into the box as there is on a winger. You can almost drift a little bit more in midfield. A mistake isn't as costly at times, but I think he'll be someone we see coming on from the bench to begin with, and then if he gets a few good performances under his belt, he can hopefully come on and start starting for us. No, he looks really good with his feet. I think he'll be similar to Tom Lowry, that sort of where the ball just seems glued to his feet and he can just drag it round through everyone. But he's got a good shot on him as well, a lot of power on him, a lot of skill. I think he's someone who, at his best in 3 or 4 years, will be chipping in with regular goals, whether that be with us or higher up, lower down, I don't know where. But he's someone who will shoot a goal, take on his man. He's got a confidence about him. He's got a ability to score goals and create chances. And he did, I can't remember the game, but he did nearly score one already for us this season when he did come on in one of his cameos. So he's someone to watch for sure.
Absolutely. Tim's weighed in with his views on players to watch for next season. Taberner, I suppose, is a bit more of an obvious one because of what he produced pre-injury. But he's saying, expecting Taberner and Holecek to make massive strides next season. Don't sleep on Owen Lunt either. He's a Leith. I've never heard the word Leith. But nimble, he's a Leith nimble number 10 with the ability to get beyond the strikers. So that sounds very exciting. I believe he's a nephew of Kenny, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Yeah, and if you didn't know that, watch the way he runs next time you watch him, because they have the exact same running style. It is genuinely uncanny. They run and they carry themselves in the exact same way.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, that's very exciting. Hopefully not the exact same way as Kenny Lunt would now.
Yeah.
I would hope Owen's a little bit ahead of him now. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, that's really exciting. Let's see how Owen Lunt gets on when he comes through. So hopefully it can be a big season for him, and a few exciting options in that number 10 spot. Certainly. Kenny never needed to run, according to Tim. Right. Where was I? So I wanted to come to you, Tom, on what are the big reasons, if we're going to condense everything we've talked about in this podcast, what would be the reasons to believe, first of all, what do you think of the aspirations for next season? Is it another top 7 finish, given you've lost Stockport and Wrexham and Mansfield, 3 big budgets from the league? It's a little bit more open. Do you think top 7 is a fair expectation again, or do you think you've got to be a bit more guarded than that?
I think right now it's really, really hard to tell because it does just depend on recruitment. I think internally in the club, Lee Bell and the staff, they'll be believing they can go at it again. I mean, people writing us off won't discourage us. They did it last season and we were in the top 7 and very much without injuries could have got automatic promotion. I think that's a huge what if in itself. I think fans, I mean, personally at the minute, I'm sort of expecting a bit more of a consolidation season, possibly mid-table, breaking through a few of the youngsters, relying on experienced pros to drag us through, getting points and comebacks and, holding on to wins and whatnot. But I would very much take a 10th to 15th kind of finish, but we progress and develop the youth players that will be key to our next promotion. I would very much take that. If we were up there, no complaints, because obviously, be another fun season, be a season where you could possibly get promotion. But I think, like you said at the start, I think it comes down to last season we did overachieve. There's no way about it. And it possibly was too early in the cycle. It possibly was not the time to go up. We very much possibly still could have lost Offord, Nevitt and Rio, even if we had gone up. And then, I mean, replacing them in League 2 is hard. Replacing them in League 1's pretty much impossible to, compete with replacements of them rather than them themselves. So I think internally the squad will believe. I think Lee Bell will certainly believe. He'll be up for motivating the lads, getting the fans behind them again. But this season was just important to get the fans back on side after a few really tough years of sporting through. And so if we just continue doing that, continue, getting points on the road, winning at home every now and again, pulling off an upset or a comeback, I'd be very happy with that if we make long-term progress towards a promotion with Holecek, Taberner, Billington, Williams as a core. I would prioritise that over short-term success personally.
See, this is what I really admire about Crewe Alexandra fans, is you've got such an admirable sense of perspective. It's very rare that I would sort of sit in front of a fan that's just reached the playoff final and they'd say, if we finish between 10th and 15th next season,
Yeah.
I'll be happy as long as we're developing the younger players, because I think it's a sense of a bigger picture that I think Crewe Alexandra fans have, because that's how the club's always been run. But I don't think I've come across another club in the country where that's the where that's the philosophy of the fans.
Yeah,
and I mean that, I really do mean that as a compliment. I don't mean that as an insult. I think it's a compliment to you lot in terms of how you're able to see the bigger picture.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I think my favourite ever example of that was opening day 2019 when we lost 3-0 to Plymouth. And I remember me and my dad walking out of the ground, both looked at each other and said, "We've lost 3-0, but we'll go up this season." Because we'd lost 3-0, but we'd played so well, and you were just watching your own players that you've known are developing for years. And it was like, yeah, we back them to, if they perform like that each week, you'll beat most clubs. We might not have even scored against Plymouth today, but we'll beat most clubs playing like that. And then, as it turned out, we were right that year. So there is sort of a humbleness about quite a lot of Crewe fans. I think, especially in the older generations, where they know that success takes time supporting Crewe. You've got to be patient. And I think that's why I'm not getting, nervy that we're not making any strides in the transfer market. Because at the end of the day, if you're a Crewe fan, patience is a virtue for you, and you've got to wait and hold on for the good times, because they do come when you support Crewe. It just takes a lot of time to get there, and you go through some pretty bad times as a Crewe fan as well. But like you said, it is the philosophy of the club is prioritise our own long-term sustainability with our youth, and then focus on the short-term second. And I love that's our way, and that's how we function as a club.
Yeah, I find that really refreshing, Tom. So what would be the reason to believe, Tom, that, or the reason for optimism that Crewe Alexandra will achieve their aspirations next season?
2 words, Lee Bell. I think he's the main reason that we've got to believe, because there weren't many of us believing last season. Everyone was writing us off time and time again. Before the season, during the season, before Doncaster away, we were written off and we delivered. So it's very easy for me to go in our head, oh, we've lost our best players, we've not got a strong attack, I'm writing us off to a struggle next season. But if you do that, that's when we go at our best. I think a Lee Bell Crewe side fundamentally is at its best when it's got the odds against them, because that's just how he operates. He is a sort of personality that can motivate and drag a team through bad times. And I think, we've just come off a high of a season. Granted, it ended in bad form and heartbreak at Wembley, but that's not a reason to believe, because he's got everything right. He's earned our respect, and he's very much earned our time and patience, because he will bring a promotion to this football club unless he's poached by, a higher league before he can. He will definitely bring a promotion to our football club, whether it's next season, the one after, or the one after that. What he's building will eventually work and pay off. And it's an approach that a Bradford or a Swindon or an MK Dons, Salford, they don't do it this way. And that's why I back us to eventually have success, whether it's next season or not. But that's the reason to believe. It's because the model we have will work more sustainably than just spending big and getting proven promotion winners in. Granted, that'll work for one of them teams I listed, but one of them will inevitably flop. It happens every year in League Two. One of the big punchers, I mean, last season it was probably Bradford and Salford. And to be honest,
well, Swindon as well have had lots
of
issues.
Exactly. And yet Crawley and Crewe, who I think I saw on a few people, 23rd, 24th, 20th, 21st, both of us were there at Wembley. So it's one of them. One of the big hitters will fail, and Lee Bell will go under the radar again with what he's building at Crewe. That's why I believe in us next season.
What would be the reason to doubt?
I mean, that would definitely just be coming off of the form of last season. Towards the end, last sort of 10 games, we were probably one of the worst teams in the division. Granted, there were factors for that, injuries and, big sort of confidence issues and whatnot. And there was reasons for that. But I think that would be the reason to doubt us, that was our bad spell. It's important to not carry the Wembley heartbreak, and it's important to not carry over that form into next season. That's why I doubt us. I think losing Offord, Nevitt and Rio as well, that can't go understated how important they were for our team last season. So there are reasons to doubt us, but I think with doubt, with Crewe naturally sort of comes that positivity that we'll sort it out and we'll recruit well, we'll get it right. But the loss of 3 key players and the sort of form we had towards the end of last season are the reasons to doubt us, I'd say.
Okay. I was going to ask this question earlier, but I'll ask this now. How much faith do you have in the ownership of the club and specifically Charles Grant?
I think there was certainly a time, and I think during the sort of League Two season after relegation where, it did turn a little bit bitter towards Charles Grant. And I think that was, myself included, it was quite reactionary. It was quite, we've been really bad since COVID. We've come back as fans and we've paid our money. We've travelled, we've supported you, and we're just not getting anything back out of it. And then I think Grant is just, he keeps the club going. I think the ownership group does keep the club going. And it's very important to look at perspective with other club struggles. Morecambe, right now, you've got sort of your Berries and your Wigans and your Boltons that have gone through it. And so it's important to recognise that, they don't do everything right. There's stuff they could improve on, but they have the best interests of the club at heart. They're not businessmen, they are football fans, I would say. And I think that is important. You need people who understand football in the game. You see it so often with ownership, and you see it so often across the EFL and the FA, where people who just don't get football are really high up in football because they see it as a business, they see it as a job, they don't see it as the beautiful game, they see it as just money. And so it's important that we do have people on board behind the scenes that get it, that want us to win games, that will go and celebrate a last minute winner. I think we have that with Charles Grant. I think there are fair criticisms of him, as there are with any ownership in the EFL, in the Premier League, and the lower leagues. But no, he has the best interests of the club at heart. And as long as, he keeps funding the club and we keep getting to stay afloat and watch Crewe Alexandra Football Club, then it's hard to complain too much, I would say.
Tim said, I agree with Tom on Lee Bell. He's the main reason for optimism. With a normal amount of progress from some of the individuals and some more good recruitment from Josh Kennard, we should be able to hold our own next season. So with that in mind then, Tom, too early for a prediction, obviously, because a lot can happen between now and the end of the window. There's another 10 weeks. No, 2 months, 10 weeks. Yeah, anyway, whatever. What sort of level of, give me a number between 1 and 10 to denote your level of optimism ahead of next season?
I'll probably go with 5 or 6. I think it very much is just dependent on recruitment at this point. I think until we've even got a player through the door, we've not even really got a starting 11 in mind at the minute. You've just got to wait for that, and then I think then I'll be able to come back with a better answer on that. I think, like I said before, the reasons that I've got that optimism and that belief are Lee Bell, what we did well last season, players like Mickey, Connor Thomas and Chris Long to form. Already that to me looks like the spine of the team. There's definitely reasons to be positive. Just at this moment in time, it's way too early to tell, to even make a prediction. In my mind, it's somewhere in mid-table, but after recruitment, it could be, 18th, 19th, it could be 6th, 5th. So we'll have to wait and see on that, I think.
Absolutely. Well, lots can happen between now and the end of the window. But Tom, thank you so much for your insight on this.
Been a pleasure.
On this EFL Debate Summer Deep Dive. Great to get your insights. Thanks to you for watching at home. This has been the EFL Debate Crewe Alexandra Summer Deep Dive. Go follow and subscribe if you haven't already. Plenty uploaded to YouTube and Spotify, and we'll see you again next time.